The views and opinions expressed in the Golden Boot podcast are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Golden Boot podcast as a whole.
Y'all ready to get rolling? Quiet on the set.
Yeah, you muted my boy.
Let's try this again. Hey, welcome back to another episode of HBCU Hour. It's your boy, Pooh Bear. I got my man, Aunt Petty Murphy, in the building. And you rubbing off on me because I've been being petty.
Yes, you have, sir. You have. A little too petty.
Oh, man. But nah, man. Glad to be back, man. We got a good one in store tonight, man. We're going to switch it up a little bit, man. Talk a little bit about bands, man. That's one thing we don't, don't talk about a lot, but they definitely a part of the game. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, we don't talk about them enough for sure. They definitely an integral part of game day experience.
Yes, sir. Man. But first, man, we talked. It was right before Media Day, man. We had Prairie View and Texas Southern on. At the time, it looked like Mr. Ashley Robinson was gonna change zip codes. He decided to stay in Jackson though. Said he got something to, finish out. He didn't want to go nowhere else. But
yes, sir. I think we kind of got that news at Media Days that that might be a little premature reporting on him departing Jackson, but good to see that he finally is staying and that there was officially a hire made, and it wasn't Ashley Robinson.
It was, man. It was. Hey, I ain't gonna lie to you. The guy who was hired, it is what's you got the name? Oh, there it is. Anton Goff. Goff. I say golf. It's Goff. Anton Goff. When I first saw the picture, man, you remember well, you don't watch Marvel movies like that. But he looked like the villain from Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man.
I have seen that.
He looked like the villain from the first Ant-Man.
I wonder if he came to Jared Goff. That's the first thing that came to my mind.
Question. That's a good question. But yeah, he did look like the villain of Ant-Man. I was like, oh snap.
But congratulations on him and Prairie View for that announcement that they came out with today, and hopefully they got the right guy for the job, and
most definitely
their success will continue under him in his new role as athletic director.
Correct. Yep. Speaking, I got one more thing before we get ready to go to our guest. Have you seen Alabama A&M's shoes? You know how Grambling had the shoes? Alabama A&M shoes, they actually look pretty good, man.
You watching this NFL game though?
What? No, I'm not. I probably should be.
Well, I mean, shout out to Alcorn's, Claude and Chairless. He been out there making plays on the field, man.
That's what's up.
Got a little HBCU alum in the Hall of Fame game making some plays. So good to see them making plays whenever they get an opportunity,
Yeah. No, I had been watching it. I just came from practice, man. Dylan's practice. And I just say this. We've been in pads for probably about 2 weeks. Them things start clacking today. Clack.
Yeah, it got real today, huh?
Oh, it got real. It got real today. It got real. We scrimmaged against 8U, 7U team against 8U. And first of all, I will say it's a world of difference in what a year can do as far as like
growth for your body.
Yeah, growth for your body and stuff. And them 8U kids was and don't get me wrong, it's some that are as small, and we got some kids that's as big. But yeah, that that was something serious. So a lot of feelings was hurt today. A lot of people went home with tears in their eyes.
They gonna learn today.
Yeah. So, but it is what it is, man. We're gonna learn. Let's go ahead and get this thing cracking, man. But first, you know what we got to do. Do want to say thank you everybody for watching. Could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. We appreciate that. Don't forget, subscribe, like, share. P.S. Super chats are open. Shout out to our people. HBCU Band Talk. Say what's up, folks. Hey, this is an episode for you. This is an episode you're gonna enjoy. What's good? Texas Southern in the building. Dave, boy, listen, Dave. Whew, I know Dave tired.
He got real last night up in HBCU.
Dave was defending Auntie's honor to the utmost last night. He had to come out swinging, but
a couple people. It was a couple. It got emotional in there. Feel passionate a few times in there last night.
Yeah.
That's how you know the season getting close, bro.
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's almost that time.
And we weren't even talking football. We were talking about the band.
Exactly.
We were talking about the
But
band.
hey, that just lets you know it's almost band season too, man.
Yeah, but Dave, I ain't never tired. All right, Kevin Gates. All right, Kevin Gates in the building. But nah, man, it's I enjoyed it last night, but it did bring up some interesting points of view. So here we go, man. Shout out to our sponsors over at betonline.ag. BetOnline, we'll be back 1 minute. BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your sports information, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds, lines, and player injury reports for this year's NBA and NHL playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters. This season, we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. We have everything from NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL to golf, tennis, UFC, and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games that you can play right from your home. Head on over to betonline.ag today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use the promo code BLEAV to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a full deck tonight. We got my man from HBCU Overdrive, Doc Holliday, in the building. From the Down South Football Podcast, our good man, Dave Gardner. And the man who stirred it all up last night. Look at the flick of the wrist, because he was stirring that thing up. Our good man, Herb, contributor. I don't even know. Look, Dave. I mean, Herb, you got so many titles. Listen, I ain't gonna even go through all of them. Listen, we just know the man stirred it up. We're gonna call him Chef. Chef Herb in the building. Let's go, fellas. Welcome back.
I like that. I like that. I like Chef Herb, man.
Chef Herb in the building.
He was cooking everybody last night, man.
Yeah, I had no choice, man. I had to put some folks in check.
Right, Dave, before we get too far in this, I'm putting a disclaimer out there now. I don't want to hear nothing about no white shoes tonight.
Well, you know, you started with the shoes because you said some Pooh you know, he been petty. The P got to be for petty. He started with talking about A&M shoes, and then he said Gremlin shoes. So I only know Gremlin for one pair of shoes.
No,
the white slippers,
and then the white Walmart special. That they have. I can't understand, man. Y'all get y'all some black shoes, man, with some spats, man. Look a whole lot better. That's it. But I'm done with the shoes for the night.
Can't have Dave on the show without him bringing up.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I looked at those A&M shoes, man. They look nice. You know what I'm saying?
I like them. Them Nikes, they dope. They dope.
The old man shoes right there.
Yeah. They got to look better than the others. Go ahead, Pooh. I'm sorry.
No, you good, fellas. First of all, I do want to say, Doc, I did not know you was in the band. As tall as you are,
what did
hosting
you
up
play?
tuba players,
bro. I've been told y'all I was in the band. I played trumpet and the French horn, mellophone.
Man, you should have been.
Man, you
should have been in the post.
Oh, don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. Like
Man,
Like
look,
back then, it would have been a whole different story.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm gonna have to ask y'all the question. Somebody, when I was in middle school, I had met one of my dad classmates. He was like, "Yeah, what y'all do?" He said, "Oh, you know, what I'm saying he's in the band." He said, "Oh," so I'm gonna ask y'all the question you asked me. Beat a blow. What you play? Herb, what was your instrument?
man, I played trumpet, baritone, mellophone.
Gotcha. Doc, you already said you was trumpet and French on. Dave, what were you?
Hey man, I'm a screaming demon, man. Played trumpet at Alabama A&M section leader 1998, 1999, and 2000.
Oh
Man, look,
man,
just put on YouTube, baby.
oh
You're gonna see
man,
the highlights.
I'm gonna have to.
Herb
Yeah,
already know what
I
time it
don't
is, so I
know,
don't even have
man.
to say no
Man,
more. I don't have to say
I
no
don't
more.
know,
that was
man.
the heyday right there.
Man,
Yes,
Pooh,
sir.
you realize you got the Hatfields and McCoys up on the stage,
I
right?
do,
Yeah.
I do.
Oh yeah.
But
I
that's,
didn't necessarily do it on
That's
purpose,
that's
but I'm glad
Puka
I did.
Petty. I tell you,
but
told
yeah,
y'all,
Petty,
I mean,
man.
man.
they,
Yeah.
but yeah, those guys. We joke a lot, man. But I mean, those cats, especially during that time period, A&M was on it. I mean, they was really on it with that section. So yeah, big shout out to y'all, man.
We appreciate it, man. Appreciate it, Herb.
All right. So let's. I want to go here. Let's go here. Um, band. What does band mean to, especially in the HBC culture? What does band actually really mean to the games?
Okay, who wants to start?
I'll go first. I go
All right.
first. I'm gonna tell you how deep it was my freshman year at Alabama A&M. And it's been like I've been, I mean, I live in Birmingham, from Birmingham, but it got so deep, man. The football team, and I probably shouldn't say this, but it's old news. Football team in 2 consecutive summers straight used to get to fight in the cab. Now here's the deal. It was because we felt like everybody came to see us. They didn't come to see the football team because during that time, A&M didn't have the best of the best. They wasn't that great at the time. They've had some great seasons, but I think it means everything to the band and to the game. Now, here's my thing: is this? If you ever wonder how much they mean, just look at the crowds when the band, let's say a visiting band, don't come, compared to when the visiting band does come. You can just look at the ticket sales, look at the attendance. Just imagine out on the Magic City Classic, for example, without the bands there. Um, I think we'll still have a good crowd, but it wouldn't be 70,000. I guarantee.
Yeah, I'll just say this, man. And I think Dave is on point with that. I'll also put it another way. And I'll use Prairie View as an example. While back, good while back, Prairie View wasn't the best football team in the world.
Boy,
Anybody remember?
Yeah,
Those guys lost a lot of games in a
If I'm not
row.
80,
mistaken, it was like 88 in a row. But I ain't
80
Yeah,
in a row.
88, 80 in a
80,
row.
80 in a row.
And the band program was essential in keeping that program afloat and keeping people coming to games and keeping people engaged. And I think what people, that are outside of the culture tend to kind of overlook is that when we talk about HBCU football, whether it's D1, D2, or what have you, um, the fan experience of those games is one of the most unique collegiate fan experiences you're going to find in sports. And I say that wholeheartedly, not just in college football, but on the American sports landscape,
Yeah.
because there's nowhere else where you're going to find the meshing of culture, identity, music, and sport like you do at when you walk into a stadium, on a Saturday afternoon, and you hear the band crank up, and you see the tailgates going, and you see folks wrapped around the stadium, but not in the stadium because they get some grub and listen and waiting for the band to march in. You know,
Yeah.
I think people, and for the longest time, man, I think people really kind of, especially those that are on the athletic side of the house, the football side of the house, there's always been a rivalry between football, the football establishment in HBCUs and bands because of that dynamic, or rather that symmetry that has, you know, it had to be like that, out of necessity, so
I'm sorry.
it,
I'm not laughing at you, Herb. I'm laughing at the chat. D Law said, "My name is Devin Miles, and I'm looking for a band scholarship. I'm one of the best snare
man,
drummers in the state, and my
man.
cornrows are on point."
Man, he the first cat that's gonna be doing wall sits, bro.
Boy, I
but
hate that.
but
I hate it.
I'll say this though, like I think you don't have HBCU football without the bands.
Nah.
Um, not the way we know it. And there's no coincidence that whenever these G5 and P5 schools, whenever they come for these guaranteed money games, what's the one stipulation that they put?
You gotta bring
Make
the
sure you
bands,
bring the
Bring them
man.
band.
bands.
Because their fans want to be a part of that culture. Their fans want a piece of that culture because they don't get it from their institutions and their bands at their institutions. So that's the first thing that they want. They don't really care about the game. If you look at LSU Southern last year, that stadium was packed up until halftime. After
Mhm.
halftime, everybody left because everybody was only coming to see the band.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, and I think that's why the news that ESPN dropped about the national championship and the framework is big, because a lot of times um, there was always an excuse about why band isn't, the performance art isn't a competitive thing, or why um, we people shouldn't view it as such. Anybody that's, and you guys know, anybody that's ever put on a uniform, like Imagine City Classic, me and Dave wouldn't be talking right now. Me and Dave would be, yeah, man, y'all kick rocks. Go back to go back to normal, or go back to Montgomery. You know what I'm saying? So, but after that, we'd be cool. But it's just Pooh, anybody that's Pooh, you familiar with Southern and Grambling and Southern and Jackson State.
Hmm.
Those rivalries are just as intense, you know, just as drama filled as the football rivalries. And
Yeah.
and the fact that we have a framework now that kind of goes along with it, you know, I think ultimately is great for the fans, but it's also great for the programs too, because it's going to to really force programs and force schools and administrations and institutions to really invest.
Mm.
Because I think you know I'm a DC kid, and I mean when I grew up on Howard and Norfolk State, and I knew what those bands were like growing up on them, but a lot of people across the country didn't. I knew what A&T who A&T was, and I knew Hampton had a band back in the day, all sorts of stuff. But the real key to having an event like this and having something like this that's consistent is that it's viewed in a different light, and it's a big opportunity for schools to use the bands as marketing tools like they are. They're already big marketing tools for institutions, but now you're putting a framework to it, you're putting some cash to it that the schools are going to be getting, and you're getting a chance to tell the story of what HBC marching bands are about and what they mean to the culture, and you're doing it outside of the realm of an exhibition, you know. Um, I mean, the only other equivalent I can think of right off the top of my head is Drum Corps International. If you're familiar with Drum Corps International, um, those guys do core style band, and it's not those aren't even school affiliated. A lot of folks that are in band programs in schools, or even HBC programs. I was a part of Drum Corps cadets of Bergen County when they were cadets of Bergen County instead of cadets, and that was, I'm not dating myself here, but yeah. um, it's a really good thing to see those things, because anybody that looked at that model, man, those guys get, the sponsors come out of the woodwork for those guys. Those kids are traveling. Those are private organizations, and we have the opportunity to do the same thing but with our schools, and that is, to me, that's huge.
Yeah.
And it's something that's long overdue. And I think Dave and Doc can probably attest. There was, the idea has always been there, but there was always some roadblocks, and some of those
Yeah,
roadblocks were internal to that.
yeah. When it comes down to it, like I said last night, man, like it don't matter who if you in the band, it don't matter who you know what I'm saying, who playing. Like you literally once you put that uniform on with the spats and whatever you got, however you get going, it was like going to war. You know what I'm saying? It's basically you basically battling the band across you. Like I want to see who could crank the loudest. I want to see who has the best field show. A lot of people, when I talked to a lot of kids when I was at Jackson, it's like when Southern Week came, like they in the whole zone. Like they don't come back to the room. Usually they come back in the room around about 10, 11. They don't come back to the room like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning because they getting ready for battle. And I think the same thing, you can say the same thing for Southern for the jukebox. They get to go to battle, and it doesn't matter who was in front of us. Like I want to see if I want to destroy you
Yeah,
on the field and in the stands.
yeah. I
Yeah,
ain't gonna, I ain't gonna lie, man. I'm gonna tell you, my first year at Alabama State, man. That was 1993. Our first game, was Gulf Coast Classic against Southern, and we had a whole lot of hype coming that year. We were pushing about what 220, 230, 240 instrumentalists,
Yeah,
talking a whole bunch of crap, and we went into that stadium and got our wigs split.
yeah.
I
By
mean, just
128 horns.
whew,
Mm.
boy.
It was
I
on the
mean,
margin.
that's
Southern was on the margin 128. Then.
man, that was PTSD right there, boy. We
boy,
still talk about. We still
the
talk. We call that the Great Blowout of 1993.
the
Then we,
first time I seen Southern in person was my freshman year in 1997, and bro, I ended up with a whole headache for the whole night because they was that loud. We was sitting on the just listening on the other side, and then it's so crazy because when you leave out the stadium, you could still hear them just blowing. You know what I'm saying, in the stadium. You probably about maybe a third of a mile to your car or something like that, you can still hear him in the studio.
Oh, it's still blowing.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
uh I, I think that a lot of people take for granted, real quick, and is the work they see the work that the athletes put in, and that is
right.
very just do. They put a lot of strain on their body. God, just I have a son that goes through that on the collegiate level, so I see it, I understand it, but I think people take for granted because you're in the band, you ain't put in work. I'm gonna give you a perfect example of a summer band practice when I was there. Things have changed, but you are, let's just say, first day of practice, you up running at 6 a.m. You eat breakfast at 8. You leave breakfast, you got sectionals by 10. You take a break. You inside at about 11. You break for lunch. You come back to sectionals at about 2. Then you
yeah,
go inside full band to about 3. You break for dinner at about 4 to 5. After that, you're on the field at about 6 o'clock until this is one
yeah,
day. This
Mhm.
is one
yeah.
day.
Yeah, and I, just to piggyback off what Dave's saying, boy, you talk about injuries during training
Yeah.
camp. I've seen more blown knees, more torn ligaments, more torn tendons. I mean, you would think that you were at 2 a days in football. I mean,
Nah,
it's
it's
no
tough.
joke. I know like I said, I've seen, you know, and I mean, and some of a lot of the conditioning and calisthenics and stuff that we
Yes.
do are designed to get you in shape, because not only do you have games to worry about, but certain programs, particularly parade heavy programs like Tennessee State, Southern, you're going to be marching parades, almost 365 days a year, whether it's
Yes.
Mardi Gras, whether it's, media engagements that you're going to get. I know when I was in school, we traveled and did football games and NFL games and the like, and we had to do parades, along with them. So it's folks that think this is some sort of just leisurely activity, if you don't come prepared to pre-drill, wherever, I'll just say this, regardless of what band program you go into, any band program worth their salt, and you come in thinking pre-drill is a joke, you're not going to last a week. Is particularly, if the program has a high standard of performance and a tradition about it. It's I've seen a lot of kids, a lot of students find that out the hard way. Where they thought it was a joke. Yeah, you're good on your horn, but are you good with everything else? And in a lot of instances, you're not. So um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's why when we're explaining things last night on HBCU Nightly, sometimes folks don't really get the fact that people are about the rivalries are passionate, and the folks um, that are part of programs, that stuff stays with you for life. Like I did military service after school, and basic training wasn't nothing compared to pre-drill. It wasn't to me. It wasn't nothing compared to, we were already doing that stuff, getting up 4 in the morning, doing calisthenics, doing crab walks and death marches on the field and practice. That stuff came with the territory. So, I want folks that are listening to the show that may not be familiar with the work that kids put in. Um, those kids put in work, and those kids are extremely talented. And not only that, they're looking for competition, particularly
Yes.
and that was part of the point we were trying to make last night
Yeah.
on HBCU Nightly for teams and programs that are not affiliated with the HBCU conferences, because at the end of the day, those kids are looking to compete and looking
Yeah.
to play against people. And the fact that there's a framework that's available for everybody gives everybody a rubric to measure themselves against, which is great. You know, now, the further on we get into the show, I'll say that I don't think the framework goes far enough. I think the framework is a start.
Okay.
Because it only evaluates one aspect of the culture and one aspect of the performance art. You know, and I think Dave and Doc can tell you that, you know, when a band comes into the stadium, you know, they're competing from the moment they march in, from the moment they get into formation to the moment that fifth quarter is over with and they march out, and even after.
All right.
So that's something that I think, what ESPN is doing is a really good start. And I think, the undefeated was, I know Don Roberts, the guy that was over the undefeated polls and stuff. They were doing a really good job. I think it's a good start, but I think it's leaving a lot of room for um, for other frameworks and other entities to put their own frameworks together for bands to compete, and I think that's excellent.
All right. So our good man Dave, Auntie Dave, he said he had friends who didn't do band their senior year just to see what it was like to be a regular student.
Hey, yeah, that was weird for me.
Yeah,
That was weird, dude. I mean,
So
that was I did I didn't march my last year at state, and it was just like, wow, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
what
I don't know if I could have survived being a regular student, not in graduated. I couldn't have. I would have had way, way too much time on my hand. At least for me, knowing where I had to be, at least, I knew that 4:15 where I need to be, six,
Gave
seven
some
o'clock is what I
structure.
need to be. It gave me structure. And I
yeah.
knew that if I wanted to continue to participate, I had to hit the books. I had to do what I needed. I wasn't a straight A student, but I did enough to do what I needed to do. So for me, it was structure. I was on the reverse of that. I don't see how the kids that was not involved in anything, I mean, it doesn't have to be banned, anything. I don't see how they survived, but
because
that was me.
but it's just like what you just said. It's a structure. Like even when it comes down to it, like you can still use that same structure that you had when you was in the marching band and use that in your everyday life.
Yeah, to
You know what
this,
I'm saying?
yeah,
Like it, like when it comes down, like getting up at a certain time, getting up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and you on a schedule, you on a constant schedule. So people just don't some people don't understand that, like just being in the band, just being on a constant schedule, and just being when you just being a regular student, like you said, you have a lot of time on your hands.
Too much.
yeah,
Spring
and I,
semester, I would struggle because I was like, I don't know what the hell to do because we had wind ensemble or jazz band, but I had way too much time on my hand. I was either drinking or going to a basketball game. That's pretty much what I did in the
yeah,
spring. So
Hey, I got D-Lo says, Doc and all the band folks on the call. Tell the truth. What was your 2K band level when you were marching? 0 to 100.
well, I'll be real, man. I think I was about an 87, 88
Okay.
on trumpet.
Okay.
You know,
What was your strength? Was it your
uh,
marching style? Was it your play? What was your strength?
I just think I was a really good all around bandsman all the way around. I wasn't no screamer, or I mean, I could scream, but we had cats in our section when I was marching that was designated for it. You could plug me in at first, second, third, or fourth. And when people really don't, people hear that and they're like, well, you play third or fourth chair. No, you want strong players on your bottom parts, in your sections, because if you don't, that
Pause.
stop it, man. If you don't, man, it's gonna really affect the overall sound quality and color of the band. So, and that's
yeah,
not to get into the more technical aspects of what these ensembles really strive for when they try to connect with audiences. But that's huge. You know what I'm saying?
hey,
That's why you got certain bands that have a certain reputation for having really good arrangements, really good sound concept and sound quality, and then you got other bands that well, they're
Sound
really,
like crap.
yeah, yeah,
Just say
hey,
just be real with it.
yeah,
Ant. If I had to answer that question, I wasn't a dancer, so I'd probably give myself about a 70 in dancing. March style, I was probably about a 92. Screaming, I was a 99. So I'm a 97
yeah.
across the board, man. I'm a
No,
97. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
I'll say
Section
this, man.
leader. I
Y'all,
see you, section leader.
yeah, that entire section while y'all were there, man, y'all was on some crack or something, bro.
Yeah.
Because
Doc, what about you?
And I'd probably say about an 80. I ain't, you know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna say I was the best dancer, like you said, but when it came down to the music, like just reading it and just playing the way it's supposed to be played, I mean, I'm like at a 95 on that.
yeah,
yeah,
But
and I think the good thing, having discussions about this is that you know, when we share our experiences, about our, button heads or running against the other band, you know, those things last generation. Like, the platform that I run, View from the Sidelines, started a long time ago on a message board called the Fifth Quarter, and
yeah, I remember that.
yeah, and I was a columnist on the Fifth Quarter. That's where the name View from the Sidelines came from. And Christy Walker and Mike Lee, Alabama A&M grad and North Carolina A&T grad, founded the site.
Oh,
And
Mike Lee,
Mike Lee, I'm sorry, my
frat
bad.
brother. Yeah, my frat brother.
Yeah, Mike is a cool cat.
Yeah,
Um, they found. There were some trailblazers, man, for real, because we probably wouldn't have the social media reach and impact that we have now if it wasn't for that site. If it wasn't for those, that initial community coming together and really opening, lifting the blinds, pulling the blinds back, so to speak, on what the culture is. You know what I'm saying? So it's and I think Dave was on that platform. Um,
hmm
you know, Saturdays and Sundays hit the message board, folks. It's just like it would be just like
right.
HBCU nightly. Was.
That was before YouTube, so you couldn't get it in video. Wasn't no video. I mean, unless somebody had a VHS tape. So you would go to the fifth quarter and read through the blogs to see who got blown out. But that
Right.
question that Adrian put up there, 10C or 7C, for me, man, I played on a 10.5 in high school. My whole section basically played on Shilkers, man, 6'8", 4'8". So we didn't do the 7C. We used, I got to do it. That was Bama State that was using 7Cs over there.
Yeah, we had
So I could. It wouldn't be me if I didn't take a shot. I got to take a shot.
See, we ain't had no choice though. Danny Davis made us play on those 7Cs, but that made us
man,
that made us stronger though.
Yeah, Adrian said 5C, Dave.
Nah, 6'8", 4'8" Shilker, man. Nah, man, big boy stuff. Nah, Adrian, we need other stuff down in Montgomery. They blending in with baritones over there.
Hey man,
I'm just talking.
Hey man,
Hey.
but it's yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's good stuff. By the way, I saw swacking the fools post, man. That triangle thing.
Yeah,
we're gonna have
G said he played triangle.
yeah, y'all funny, but but yeah,
Oh,
dude.
man.
I think when we talk about, and I think it's a good thing that we get a chance to talk about the actual structure of the framework for this national championship, because
I'm trying to get that Herb. Let me run the thing. I'm gonna get you there. I'm gonna get you there.
My bad.
I'm gonna get you there. All right. Let me ask y'all a question. Any of y'all still play or dabble in music at all?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I started back because I'm trying to pass this on to my daughter. So, that's she's. I mean, I'm really blessed to have an 11-year-old that has been exposed to the culture, and that's all she asks about. She's. You got to raise kids right the way you want them raised. So, she's excited. She's been coming with me on my media endeavors and covering the culture and bands and the like. So, that was one thing that I made a promise to myself that I was gonna pass this on to her. So, I think I can't speak for anybody else, but I know a lot of folks. That experience sticks with them. It's a lifetime. It's a lifelong experience. It's a lifelong connection.
Yeah.
So
Doc talked about not having sports for his child. My daughter, she ain't in the sports, but I at least got her in the band. So I at least got some kind of scholarship opportunity coming, hopefully somewhere down the line.
Nah, yeah, but when it comes down to it, like, I wanted my kids to do the same thing that I did, you know what I'm saying? But I just know that they got their own endeavors. My little girl, she want to be a cheerleader, so I'm gonna be
wrong with that.
I'm gonna be just down with her when she be cheerleading. So
I heard it.
Ready? Okay.
Yeah, nah.
Yeah, man, y'all funny.
But I'll tell people like this. My baby girl is 8 years old and she's like 4'7". So you know what I'm saying? Yeah, bro.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about being a part of the culture is that, I mean, let's be real. Everybody doesn't have the opportunity to have an athletic outlet. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's, you're not gonna, if you don't have that kid that's interested in sports, or maybe interested, but their interest kind of drifts someplace else. It's the perfect medium for it for me, in my opinion, because it provides a lot of family, community, camaraderie, fellowship, brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. And you get to compete. Like I said, that's and I gotta emphasize this for folks that aren't really familiar with the culture that are watching, that we're about as competitive as any entity on a campus, man.
So how okay, tell us this then. How do bands compete?
Well,
Because
I'll
I
take
know
that
most of the time when people think competition, they think, okay, 4 quarters, 2 halves, whatever, put a time on the clock. At the end of the time, who got the most points? I
Bro, it's
think
just
most people hear when most people hear competition, that's what they think. So how do
Well,
bands compete?
bro,
I'll take
it's
that
like
one.
money. It's like money, mano.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll let you.
What you got, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Well, well, I think the competition starts before the lights even come on. You're competing at practice. You're competing in your section, just like sports. You're competing. You don't want to be the low man on the totem pole. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Just speaking for my instrument, we have first, second, third parts. No matter all parts are important, but you don't want to be the worst on whatever part it is. So the competition starts there, even well before game day. One thing that I think that some of the newer fans may take for not fans but bandsmen may take, now I could be wrong, they may take it for granted, is the halftime show. Back in the day before the fifth quarter, you only had the halftime show. So that's
Mhm.
when everybody got to see you. Now it's more so pushed towards the fifth quarter. But in what they're getting to now, that halftime show importance is going to be huge because I doubt if ESPN is going to be sitting there at the fifth quarter, showing the fifth quarter. But what they're going to
Ah,
show is that halftime show. So as far as competition, man, you're competing at practice. You're competing when you get off the bus, when you march in. You're competing from your even the warm up. You play your scales, your marches. You're competing from the time that bus stops. You get out and you get information. So the competition starts
yeah,
long before what the people see.
yeah, and to add to that, when when you compare it to to a sports framework, um, you compete, like football, basketball, you compete in the score, win the game, what have you. It's the same thing with us, except that our medium are the fans. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying? You
that's who
know,
keeps score.
so that's who keeps score, and the fact that we have a framework now that kind of quantifies that into a formula to kind of determine the pecking orders, for lack of a better term, is great. For the longest time, people, and that's kind of why I think a lot of folks that are outside of that aren't band heads or that aren't really immersed in what HBCU bands are kind of get caught up on the terminology of exhibition and whether it's a competition or not, because it's competition, but it's framed in a different light. You know what I'm saying? It's just like I think a good analogy was used last night, gymnastics, where folks are being, you're competing, but you're competing to perfect your
For the score.
routine for the
Yeah.
score, to perfect your routine, to perfect your craft.
It's more you versus you than it is you versus the other competitor.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And for HBCU bands, it's elements of both now with the with the competition framework that's in place. So, and that's one of the reasons why I said earlier that there's a lot of room for um, you know, that framework to grow, because that's not the all encompassing um aspect of what the culture is. Just like Dave said, we compete from the time we get into formation to the time we get out of it. Whether you're talking about, percussion and auxiliary sections, whether you're talking about dance teams, whether you're talking about sections, um, and I think the way it's been done before, particularly when, you see separate events like Battle of the Bands events or stand battles or gym battles now that are really popular. Um, the culture has drifted in that direction, but the competition element is still there because you're still got that mono e mono, um, you got that mono e mono standard where you got two bands facing each other. Like, for a good example of this is the Bayou Classic. Anybody that's been to the Bayou Classic has been to the Bayou Classic Battle of the Bands the night before. And I know last time I went was a couple of years, was like 2 or 3 years ago. And, we always talked about, what we do, at the Match City Classic, but, that intensity, you could cut that intensity in the Superdome with a knife. When you wait until the end of the end of the evening and both bands march out and they sit down and you know and you got half the of the
Yeah.
dome filled up.
You got
You
the
know,
whole step show building all of the, you know what I'm saying, building up the momentum for it. And as soon as you hear them first few notes being played, everybody just, You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? That's what everybody. That's the moment everybody's waiting for. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's more build up and momentum for that than it is the kickoff on the next day.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, that's going to be really clear, the more people become very familiar with what the culture is and all the intricacies of it, is that there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. There's a lot of strategy that goes into designing a field show. There's a lot of strategy that goes into, putting together a repertoire of music that you're going to use during the season. For those of us that are in, you know, those things again start from the moment we march into the stadium and sit down, before the game where there's a zero quarter and you hear the bands playing back and forth. You got directors and staff strategizing what to play. They're listening to hear who plays what, how they sound, and what you can respond with.
Hmm.
Um, that's really evident after the halftime show and going into the fifth quarter. Particularly with the fifth quarter because there's no more game going on at that point, and the audience that's there is there focused strictly on the bands. So, um, you know, I think people are going to really you know, are really going to be enlightened by, how those things kind of work themselves out. In the SWAC, it's like for us, it's like breathing water. It's like
Yep.
breathing air because we can't not think like that. Otherwise, we're gonna get embarrassed on Saturday. Because if you go into a situation where you're not prepared or you don't have your book prepared with, I mean, I'll be real, man. I mean, I don't, I would never put any band that I would be directing in a position where I'm going up against Southern or Texas Southern or any of these talented cats that are directing and arranging without no ammo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just I can't. That I mean I've been on the receiving end of one of those, and it's not good. It's never good.
All
It's
right.
true.
Hey, so let's take. I do want to come back and actually talk about this competition, talk about this championship, and the setup and everything. But first, let's take a quick break. Hear a word from our sponsor. And we're back. I know y'all like what? Ain't nobody say nothing. Nah, it's gonna be you'll hear it on the audio podcast if you listen back. But man, I do want to get into this actual competition, the announcement of it and everything. I want to start with you, Dave, because I know you got obligations in a short while. But I want to start with you. What was your initial reaction after hearing about this championship that's been set up?
Well, first of all, shameless plug, real quick. If you guys in the Birmingham area, man, what I gotta do, I gotta go back on the other side and shut down the cigar lounge here in a second. So if you're in the Birmingham area, man, you smoke cigar, come by Chinchilla, man. Chinchilla room here at Pre-Base Smoke. So, all right, that out the way. Now, when I first heard it, man, I thought it was cool, man. It was something that I think that should have been done a long time ago, some form of this, because we'd always have battle of the bands. But again, nobody was ever crowned a winner nor a loser. You know what I mean? So my first impression was like, okay, cool, that's kind of dope. Now, when I put my thinking cap on, now I got to wonder what you're looking at. What are you judging it off of? You know what I mean? Are we going off of popularity? Well, uh, that ain't it. Are you gonna have some band heads really sitting there, breaking things down? Now, my next thing too is a just field show. If it's just field show, then I can already tell you who's probably gonna be there. Now, if you're gonna take the whole thing encompassing the fifth quarter and everything, then we still I still got an idea who it's going to be, but I love the idea. I love that the spotlight is being put on it. I would, if I'm just thinking down the line, I would love for maybe ESPN on one of their platforms would be dope if they showed the fifth quarter after maybe the big games. It don't have to be all the games, but just the big games. Just kind of get that out there. But
They can do
I
it on
love the
ESPN
exposure.
Plus. They show
Right.
they show the
So
trophy tournament for the cornhole.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Well, we're
Right.
not.
So if they could, if
Yeah.
right.
This.
So if they can encompass like the fifth quarter as well, that way you see the whole experience because as bandsmen, we look at, most band heads is really going to judge off that fifth quarter. But your fans, the people, the 60,000 people that's in that stadium, they're going to judge it off of the halftime show. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be tough how they pick them. But I like the fact that they're getting the light shined on.
Yeah, I think Dave is on point there. Um, I mean, I got a chance to look at the framework, firsthand. I talked with some of the cats from ESPN earlier this week, and there's some things that are going to be really apparent. One, um, halftime shows are going to be the exclusive, measuring rubric for it. So, there won't be any fifth quarters or zero quarters or anything like that are going to be factored into it. Um, I think I said this earlier in the show. Don Roberts, who is from the FAMU school, of influence, he's heading up that team that's going to be adjudicating halftime shows. I think the bands that participate, first there's going to be two divisions, Division One and Division Two. I'm assuming that they're going to follow on conference affiliations because most of the Division One bands are, SWAC, MEAC. You've got some independents, even though they're part of other conferences like North Carolina A&T, Hampton, Tennessee State, that are going to be in Division One and Division Two. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be covering the SWAC. I'm not the SWAC, but the CIAA, the SIAC, and any non-affiliated NAIA bands like GCAC, like Talladega, Wilberforce, some of those bands. So, I can tell you right off, just looking at the criteria, and that I'm get into more detail with this when I do my top 10 this weekend and put it out on View from the Sidelines. But, there are a couple of bands that stand out already. That are tailor made for a competition like this. In the SWAC, I mean, I would say Jackson State and Southern, and Florida A&M, primarily because those guys have a specific type of formula that they put on the field for fans. Those three bands encompass different things. Like Florida A&M is their show band, but they're really traditional in terms of how they put together their field shows, in terms of how what their sound concept is. They're very intricate, but they're very in the pocket. I'll put it like this. Bethune-Cookman is kind of there, but I'm gonna get into. I'm gonna save that for View from the Sidelines because I got to really break some stuff down.
Mm.
Um. Oh, but yeah. I'll probably get into a little bit more, but I want to get Doc's view on what we got, man. You know what I'm saying?
Like you said, basically, like you were saying that just the competition is good for a certain amount of schools that have that fit the criteria. Like you said last night, Jackson State, Southern, from SWAC, Jackson State, Southern, and FAMU. You can kind of include, let's say, you can include Prairie View, you can include Texas Southern in the whole thing. As far as with the field composition, and then like we also said last night, other schools gonna have to step up their level of play. It's just like I said, it's like sports. So you gotta level up. You gotta level up with the competition that you're going up against. So you're not as good in the stands. Your strong point is gonna be on that field.
Yeah.
And if you're not good, you're not good on that field. You know what I'm saying? You gotta at least have a consistent playbook to basically entertain the fans though, because even though ESPN is great and all this, at the end of the day, the fans are going to be the ones that going to judge what you do on that field or what you do in the stands.
Yeah.
Doc, I'm glad you said that because D-Lob says I think fans can be a part of the rubric, fan favorite category, but fans usually don't know who won the battle. So
Yeah.
let me swing this to Dave. Dave, real quick. before you get ready to, handle your business. Uh, in a band competition, realistically, outside, we know what fans like. Oh, who danced the best and who, who played my favorite song. In a band competition, no, there are certain things that are judged. Tell us what some of, some of that actually is a part of a band competition.
Man, first thing is going to be the drill. The drill, your drill. That's going to be number one to me. Number two is going to be your arrangements. And when I talk about arrangements, for those that may not know, we're talking about the actual music that they're playing and how it's structured. How it sounds. And that's why Herb was talking about FAM and Southern Jack States, even Texas Southern. Their arrangements are going to be on point. Now, also, I'm going to tell you something that I think that I was reading today that I think they're going to take into consideration in this are your dancers, your dance girls. All right, that's going to be a huge thing too. So when you're talking about competition, you're talking about the drills, you're talking about the arrangement, you're talking about the sound. They do you sound good, your volume. You know what I mean? What kind are you powerful? And then, like I said, you got your dance team. That's why I like Alabama State on one portion of that, because they have the honeybees, and the stingeheads have always been outstanding. And the honeybees are just something. They bring a flavor that nobody else is untapped. Nobody else can do it. Nobody else has done it. I don't think anybody else will try, because it'll only be a copycat scenario. So those are things I think that you look at.
Yeah, I think Dave is absolutely right, man. And just to add on to that, I think one of the things that we kind of talk about when we talk shop in terms of how shows are put together and how fans receive shows and connect to them. There are certain programs that do really good job of doing what we like to call the themed halftime show, where
Yes.
there's a theme from start to finish of the halftime show on the field. North Carolina A&T comes immediately to mind. Those guys
I was about to say.
Those guys are the masters of that. And Dr. Ruff has done an awesome job of really putting his stamp on that program. Norfolk State, another band that has a real hybrid style, and they do a really good job of putting together themed halftime show and really integrating all of those elements into a really cohesive total package for fans to ingest. That's going to be really important when the season gets started and these guys start evaluating shows, because ultimately that's going to be the standard. That's what the rubric's going to base on. When we talk about fans, fans are going to be part of the overall effect. That's probably going to be part of a category in terms of their appreciation, their input, in terms of how they receive a show. Now, I'm not sure how the team that's going to be adjudicating this is going to structure it, and I'm pretty sure that ESPN is going to release it later. But it's definitely something that we're going to have to take into consideration, man, and that you're going to see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another thing I like also with the band, and basically since I'm in Texas, when it comes down to like just the break within the halftime show, and you have the drum break. I know Prairie View is the by far is the best to do that in the SWAC. And I see A&T, they, like you said, they are masters when it comes down to that drum break. And I'm looking at Norfolk State. But that's something that I would take in, would take into consideration when it comes to, just the hat of what the play on the field.
Mm-hmm. And Doc, one thing I would say to that is, I'll just say this is for something just so minute. Like, to me, in the SWAC, I don't think anybody's out drilling Southern. I don't. That's just my personal perspective. Now, when it comes to a dance routine, they're terrible. Oh, it's trash. It's straight trash. So you can probably make up some points and gets a little, you know what I'm saying, get a little leverage if your dance routine is good. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Now of course, they got the dancing dolls, so they gonna always be on point. So my
Right.
thing is if Southern, if I'm battling Southern in the Final Four, then I got to have a solid drill. My dance girls got to be on point, but I could win it off of that dance routine unless they bring back the old Thriller routine. They can always throw that in there. They'll probably win. But other than that,
They bring the
I think I
old
like
thriller
my chances.
routine back. That's a wrap.
It's a wrap. It's over with. It's over with. You know.
Yeah, I think that all of that is going to be really important. Um, and I think the fact that we got two divisions too says a lot too. I mean, there are some, Division Two is going to be some smaller bands, some smaller
Mhm.
programs. Bands that immediately come to mind. Kentucky State. Kentucky State was smoking last year.
Yes, sir. Yes,
They were
sir.
beasts. Kentucky State, Benedict. They have a really good program.
Yeah.
Um, Surprisingly, Wilberforce, Winston Salem, they have good programs. Central State, Blake Gaines is down there. They might open some eyes, for some people. There's a
I'm gonna
lot.
say Miles College.
Yeah,
Miles
Miles.
Towson.
College.
Yeah,
Yes,
Miles.
sir.
Miles. Yeah, I mean, and I think, it's hard for us, me and Dave, to say this because Miles is in
Yeah,
state.
yeah, man. Yeah. It's all it took
Miles is
it
in
took all I
state.
had to say it, but I
Yeah,
mean,
man. Yeah, man. I mean, it's just something that, but you got to give them credit. That staff down there has had those guys really consistent. You know, in terms of just being a consistent force in that conference in the SIAC. So, I'm really excited to see what they got. Um, you know, I'll tell you what. I'm really excited to see what Mississippi Valley has.
Yeah.
Julian Bonds is down there. Anybody, all the band heads that are out in the audience, he used to be over at Talladega College. Um, Somehow, again, Talladega College for us is one of those bands in the state that we kind of get indigestion talking about. But, um, but we got to give them props because they don't have the benefit of a football program, but they've really put together a really solid program without that benefit. So, um, it's all the way around. It's going to be really interesting to see what these programs come up with, how creative they can be, because that's going to make the difference. That's what's going to get them to Celebration Bowl weekend. So um, I'm really excited to see what the season has in store.
Yeah.
I,
So
I
hold up real quick, Doc. Hey, first
go ahead.
off, my man Dave, go ahead. I know you got to get a step out on this, man. First of all, tell their people where they can find you. And again, as always, fam, we appreciate you.
Hey man, no problem, man. First of all, uh Doc, Herb, I appreciate, you guys being on with me. Golden Boot, I appreciate, the opportunity to talk. So anytime you guys want to talk HBCU sports, band, just hit me up. But you can find me on the Down South Football Podcast. You can find me at IMDL Gardner on all platforms, and also come to see me at the Chinchilla Room at Pre-Base Spokesman Cigar, the Premier Cigar Lounge here in Birmingham, man. This is HBCU built, and it's for us, man, by us. So um, that's it, man. I enjoyed my time on.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our good man, Dave. Appreciate you, brother. All right, let's get back. To the conversation at hand. Uh I do want to ask because uh Nigel says if his field shows, fam, you taking it every time. Uh but we
Oh
talked
man.
about and hold up, Coach B. What's good, Coach B? Said what would the bands be willing to work with TV producers to make sure the fifth quarter can be televised after a game? That's a good question.
I think they would be. I mean, if you're talking about programs in the SWAC in particular, um, that's cold blooded, Swag. That's really cold blooded.
Bruh.
But yeah, I mean, to answer the question, I think they would be, and not just ESPN either, but there are other platforms that are looking for that type of content. I know the NFL Network had a couple of had a couple of HBCU games on last year where they showcased the bands, and they did a hell of a job in terms of covering them, in terms of covering halftime shows, getting the sounds and the angles and stuff right. So I think those guys would be very interested in content. And I think ultimately, the more people learn about what the culture is, I think that I think that the sky's the limit when it comes to that. It's just a matter of the folks that
Mm.
that are making the decisions, in the leadership of these programs. Um, it's up to them to make it work.
Let me ask you this,
Right.
sir. You talked about Dega. Tori Williams asked, would Dega have to just film a dress rehearsal since they don't have weekly field performance opportunity? Like, I'm not trying to make
Wow,
fun of them,
that's
but
a
seriously,
That's
boy, that's
cold
a
blooded, bro.
shot.
how would
That's
That's
a
a
how
shot,
shot.
bro.
when
Well,
when would they get their opportunities to for their halftime performances or their on field performances?
I think the good thing about the way the culture is now, the way the framework is now, is that even though this is a national championship framework, there are plenty of battle of the band opportunities where folks do field shows throughout the entire season. You know, I mean, like for example, Labor Day weekend, you got the national, you got the Pepsi National Battle of the Bands that's starting the season off. You got the Honda, although the Honda's going to come pretty late. But you
Yeah.
got regional joints that are during the entire season that these bands come to and can, set a schedule and say, hey, look, we want you to evaluate X, Y, and Z show. So I don't, I think that's a good question, but I think they can get around that.
I got you.
Yeah. I'm looking in the chat. D Lob just said don't sleep on Texas Southern. In my opinion, I would never sleep on Texas Southern. When I
Yeah.
listened to them
Well,
last season,
man, they scare me with Brian Simmons over there, man, for real. Last
yeah,
year they was smoking.
like they
I
when watching them and listening to them last season when I went to the game they played Southern, I was like, ooh, they were giving the jukebox a run for their money last year in the stands and on that field.
yeah,
Like,
and yeah, and that's and I think that's the other thing too that people should understand about the craft is that just like football, man, recruiting is important. Getting kids from certain programs in certain regions is important. I mean, band directors got to get out and recruit, just like
mhm,
coaches do. You know what I'm saying? That's why you have programs that have certain standards like Southern and Florida A&M and Bethune and Jackson. That's why they're able to keep the standard the way they keep, because they're able to get out and recruit, and the name gets out there, and they're able to attract the best talent that you can get. So, there's a lot of backstory to what we do that is going to really make you know a competition like this really pop for audiences and mainstream audiences, because in a lot of ways it's just like football, it's just like basketball, because those are things that are important for you know those competitive teams and entities to succeed. You know,
Yeah.
you
So
can't.
for my bad for interrupting,
Oh,
but
you're good.
for those sports, we always do a preseason rankings, preseason polls, and I know
mhm.
you're coming out with your preseason polls, so I'm not gonna ask you that. But since we're talking about this national championship, just throw out some names of teams who could possibly see themselves. I'm not asking you to rank them, just some teams we could possibly see in the national championship.
Okay, I guess I'll go first on this one. Um, I'll put it in no particular order. I'm gonna put out a top six.
Okay.
Okay, North Carolina A&T, Florida A&M, Norfolk State, Southern, Jackson State, and Bethune-Cookman for
Bethune,
for the
ooh,
for
okay.
division for division for Division One, but that's kind of conditional. I'll get into detail on that when I do the poll.
Yeah.
Division Two, Kentucky State, Benedict, Miles, Albany State.
Hmm.
That's a sleeper for me for Division Two.
No
Uh,
ski.
nah, nah,
Mm.
nah. Um, Winston Salem, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Um, I'm gonna pick a dark horse, Savannah State,
Mm,
That's a nice one right there.
mm. Who
and
you think, Doc?
Well, I'm gonna be biased.
I,
Jackson State got love the boom, baby. A&T, Southern, FAMU. I'm gonna put these two in there. The Texas two step, Prairie View, Texas Southern, and with and as a sleeper, I like you said, Bethune-Cookman. In Division Two, I really haven't heard too much of Winston-Salem State, but I know they're good. Benedict, you know what I'm saying. Miles, I got Tuskegee in there for you, man. Kentucky State, and whew, I go with Albany because I listened to them last night and they was sounding real good.
yeah,
I
man.
dig it. I like this question by Edward Moore though. Go ahead, Pooh.
Yes. He says, "What is y'all's trust factor?" Hold on, let me actually. I thought I put it on. I'm tripping. What is y'all's trust factor in the top two bands actually making it to Atlanta? With most bands not traveling, most will have limited shows where their band will have that competitive energy to win. So this is something that came up last night a little bit. And it goes to it's something I was going to try to set up and ask is kind of what is the rubric and what are the qualifications to even be considered in the championship race?
Well, from what they've released so far, there are going to be 4 shows that are going to be evaluated for everybody that's participating. For every band program. Now, this isn't going to be contingent on travel. What they're going to do is get together with the band directors. The band directors are going to have control of which halftime shows they want evaluated, whether they're going to be traveling or not. And once they pick those shows, that's how they're going to evaluate it. Their adjudication team is going to evaluate them. Now, once once they're evaluated and they determine who qualifies, traveling to the event is not going to be an issue because ESPN is paying for all of that. So they're paying for travel, lodging, and not only that, from what they've told us, there's going to be a monetary reward for the bands that qualify for the final, and there's going to be a monetary reward for bands that participate. So that's something to I'm sure that ESPN is going to come out with details on that. But that in itself is completely different than any battle of bands we've had, we've had to deal with because that's always a question of getting you know of of getting cash because that has to be a factor.
Okay. Trying to see because we had a few comments I wanted to get to. Laughing at G said, "Put Grambling with the D2 bands."
That's
Disrespectful.
that's nasty work right there.
That's
Wack.
disrespectful, man.
That's nasty work, man. That's real nasty work, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think and I think that's a good question too. The fact of the matter is that whenever we do competitions like this, and well, now that there's actually competition, the other part of that is financial.
Mm.
Is recompense, is making sure that um, the exposure that the bands are getting, also translates into positive exposure for the university and funding, and a monetary reward. And that's, I think that's the key here, to makes this really appealing, and is that, at the end of that road, you're not only just competing for a title, but there's something monetary that goes along with it for those programs. So, I think that in itself is something that, that is really, it's important for the entire framework. I think that's something that not only is it important, but it's something that's going to really, really help it grow and help it stick.
Mm. Um. All right. Um. Doc, I know you got to get up out of here as well. Um. Tell the people where they can find you and all that good stuff.
And you can find me on HBCU Overdrive, YouTube, pretty much Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Probably cut out the Friday show, but basically Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. You can catch us pretty much 7 o'clock every night. Saturday, 8 o'clock. Central Standard Time. But yeah, man, I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you letting me come on there and just speak about bands and stuff like that. Something that I like to talk about. You know what I'm saying, with other band heads. And man, look, we just about to keep it rolling.
I heard that, man. Hey, Doc, as always, appreciate you, man. Look forward to having you back soon. That was our good man, Doc Holliday from HBCU Overdrive.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's get back to the topic at hand. And we can get ready to actually start wrapping this up. Herb,
Yes, sir.
the national championship and how it's presented. I know it's Celebration Bowl weekend, but let me ask: will it be a head-to-head competition at that point, or will it be a cumulative score that solves, or have they announced that part yet?
Well, they haven't officially announced how the scoring framework is going to be done for that final weekend. Um, yeah, I think. It's part of it's voting, but it's not voting. It's what the
Scoring
it's
process, I
is
guess it
it's
should
yeah,
be.
exactly. It's what those adjudicators put on paper. So, um, for the bands that make the final for Division 1 and Division 2, it's going to be two bands each, and they're going head to head. So it's four bands. Um, you know, Seeing that halftime shows are going to be the rubric by, what the stuff is measured by. They're going to put their best shows out, and the highest score wins. At least that's what I gather from how the framework is set up.
Yeah.
So if you make the final, I don't think the evaluation process is going to change. It's going to be based on how you execute and how that execution translates into the score you get, you know,
Yeah,
from the people that are evaluating those shows.
yeah.
So are fans going to be part of it? Yeah, I think they're going to be part of that. They're going to be part of that, that framework, but it's not going to be everything.
Gotcha.
Well, man, listen, Dave. I'm Dave. I'm sorry. Listen, Herb. I have truly, truly enjoyed having you on. Talking about this. Like I said, band is a huge part of not just HBCUs, but I mean not just the football games and the football culture, but HBCUs as a whole. A lot of people's introduction into HBCUs are through
Yeah,
the band. As a matter of fact, if you look at it, different world
Yeah, yeah.
band, one of the first
yeah.
things represented. Uh, so man, before we get up out of here, Herb, what's some like closing thoughts on the whole championship and how it's being presented as of yet, or is this kind of a wait till I get more detail type situation?
Well, I'll just say this, man. The fact that it's being done now, even though it's a better late than never type of deal,
Mhm.
it's it's big. It's big on a lot of levels. One, it really, really, gives the schools the opportunity to really put these programs on the pedestal that they deserve. You know what I'm saying? Um, and that's not to say that HBCU band programs haven't already been in the media eye or in mainstream culture. You can look as far as Super Bowls to WrestleMania and see marching bands and
Facts.
see HBCU, HBCU influence. So
All
that,
your music videos, all
eh,
your
yeah,
movies.
yeah, that,
Yeah.
yeah, that part ain't new, and it hasn't been new for a long time.
Right.
But I think the fact that ESPN is seen fit to really put a competition framework together really gives it how can I put this? It really gives the craft even more validity than it already has. And it really says a lot to the mainstream audiences that are being introduced to what HBCU band programs mean to not only, HBCU football and sports, but to, the culture at large, is that this is a really big thing. This is, I mean, and this goes to kids that are in places where HBCUs aren't, readily accessible or exposed or what have you, whether you're on the West Coast or in the Midwest or what have you. Um, Somebody can turn on the television and see a Grambling or a Jackson State or a Southern or Alabama State, you know, or
Mhm.
Norfolk State or North Carolina A&T, front and center on its own platform on ESPN or another major network, in prime time. That's huge.
Yeah.
You know.
I do. I guess another question I'm gonna ask: how long before? Because with this being ESPN production, um, or some thought, on that there whatever. How long before this gets gentrified?
That's a good question. And I think a lot of us that are in the community, that's in the culture,
Yeah.
have asked that silently, being
How
that it's
long till the Southern versus Ohio State?
that's a good question. And I think for right now, um, I don't think there's a big threat of that happening, simply because um, the way football culture at HBCUs is structured is completely different than the way football culture at PWIs or Power Five conferences, G5s are structured. You know, football is the focal point. Period. You know, I mean, Ohio State, USC, Penn State, those guys have awesome band programs. I love watching Ohio State's intricate drills, but at the end of the day, it's football, and that's the for those programs, that's the culture. Now,
But like mentioned Ohio State, that's still HBCU driven because it was what Southern former Southern.
yes and no, and that has a little bit more to do with the history of marching bands in general. Um, all marching bands, the show band style that we do, is derived from the military, essentially. So, the Big Ten, we got a lot of styles from the Big Ten. I know what Southern does in terms of the in terms of their drill concept. Um, Heck, what a lot of our bands do in terms of their drill concept have their roots in the Big Ten. And like I said, I could be here for another 3 hours talking about that, so I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
But for lack of a better word, the roots are common, but
Yes.
it's what we've done with that base that's made it what it is.
Yeah. The
That's made the
reason
culture unique.
the reason why I asked about that is because I know a lot of times whenever conversations get talked up about who's the best band and who's the best HBCU band, it bring up the fact that I believe it's FAMU is the only one to win the award
Yeah.
for so whenever you have schools like Ohio State winning this award, how long until you crown a national champion band, and then mainstream people are saying, "Well, how y'all the best band in the country whenever Ohio State's winning the award?"
Well, that's
So
the thing.
then settle it on the field, and you see what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But here's the kicker is that the Settler, and I know where you're getting at because you're talking about the Settler Trophy.
yeah,
The
that's I
Settler,
didn't know the name of it, but yeah,
yeah,
that's the word. Yeah,
good stuff, bro. But the Settler is even with that, the Settler itself has never been mainstream. You know, it's
that's true. That's
nobody
true.
nobody knows about the Settler Trophy except for folks that are within those circles. So when people kind of drop that, well, yeah, we've won Settler trophies. We've never really cared about the Settler, outside of Florida A&M. So
Hmm.
I think people really need to, kind of take a look at, um, why. Yeah, and and Tori's absolutely right. You can only
Okay.
win the Settler once,
Oh
but
wow.
it's not something that can be quantified like that. It's more
Gotcha.
so, you know, yeah, we pick a band that looks really good, and we have a group of 3 or 4 people that pick the band and give them the trophy. You know, that's not what HBCUs do, and it's not something that the culture has done. Um, since we kind of made it what it is, and I mean, and to be quite honest, you know, this kind of divergence goes all the way back to the 1950s and 60s. We saw Grambling, doing those halftime shows for Super Bowls, you know, doing those halftime shows and TV spots in the 60s and 70s. Um, they weren't asking Ohio State to do those things. They were asking Grambling.
Yeah,
So, I think, yeah, I think there's a real concern about mainstream gentrification, so to speak.
mhm,
But I think the culture is strong enough for it to stand on its own 2 feet. And the fact that it's attached to what the culture is makes it unique. And I think people at ESPN understand that, or at least they should. People that have really good business sense should understand that.
All right. Well, man, Dave, we truly again appreciate you. Uh, Tell the people where they can find you and some of the projects you got coming up.
Well, man, as you can see by the title, I'm on a platform uh, called View from the Sidelines. I can be seen on View from the Sidelines at www.halftimeglory.com. And pretty much we'll be doing polls there during the season to kind of follow the championship chase. I'm also a regular on HBC Nightly. Um, as the season gets started, we're going to be doing that every Wednesday night. If you saw the chaos that was on HBC Nightly last night, we have a good time doing it. And everything is, I mean, it was definitely something that if you're, in the space, check it out. All the contributors there are really really dope. You'll see the Golden Boot folks there on occasion too, up on the panel. Um, I can also, I cover college basketball and football for HBCUs as well, um, and you can see some of my work on HBCU Digital Network, um, as well as my own hoops platform for college basketball in the DC metro area. That's hallowedhoopsground.com. And until next time, man, you know, if you see me on Twitter or rather X or whatever the Dark Lord Elon has named this platform, follow me, man. I can be reached at HHL Seward 3 at Twitter.
man, they need to tell G Lee that they ain't stopping on it, man.
That's cold blooded.
You muted, Pooh.
Man, my bad. We'll be back on Monday. Can I finish my show, sir? Can you be quiet? Thank you. He told us, I thought it was Sunday. But we'll be back on Monday. And like that, we out. BetOnline.ag. This show was presented by BetOnline.ag.
Bring me my money.